The Jewish people have always had a peculiar relationship with money. Their Torah recounts tales of men accumulating fortunes of biblical proportion. When God took his people out of Egypt, he brought them to the foot of Mount Sinai and revealed to them many secrets, one of which was the secret to wealth. Throughout the ages, the world could not help but admire the Jewish people for their business prowess. Admittedly, in some generations, the admiration turned to hatred and became an excuse to commit unspeakable atrocities. Their greatest critics will say that they control the banks, the media, and the financial markets. Is it all just a coincidence? There is no denying that this ancient people possess a secret to the accumulation of riches that has defied the rule of nature. Alas, what is their great secret?
I've always been fascinated with money. Ever since I was a kid, I remember that I had this picture book when I was younger that inside of it, instead of putting photos, I would put bills, $5 bills, $10 bills. As I grew up, I would read any business book that I could get my hands on. And I'd also listen to any positive thinking guru that I could find. I guess you could say I've always been a student of money. There is a secret to wealth that the Jewish people have known for thousands of years. It was hidden inside of the Bible and was not ready to come out until this very last generation. You see, we're all ruled by one power, by one force, by one creator, and we all are subject to his laws. And when we know how to apply that to our lives, we're able to unleash wealth that we never thought possible. The Jewish secret to wealth is charity, in Hebrew called tzedakah.
The big key is the tzedakah. Giving the money actually gives us back more.
Because I prioritize giving, God prioritizes me.
The key secret is my charity that I give.
Tzedakah plays an intricate role in my everyday life and decisions that I make within my life.
Si quieres ganar, tienes que dar.
Generous people are more successful people.
Zohar says, open up for me a vessel like the eye of a needle, and I'll fit an elephant through it.
Now this goes against all logic. According to simple math, if a person has 10 of something and they take one and give it away, they're left with 9.
Imagine a pie that you have in front of you. Okay, someone gives you a beautiful apple pie that you love. That's the amount of money that you've earned during the year, that you worked hard for, that you've sweated with. You've got receivables and payables and staff and finding clients. We're sweating for our money, and that money is that pie. The idea of giving away 1 or 2 slices away, Hashem has ways to give you back those 2 slices and more.
What we're talking about here does not go according to nature. We're talking about a secret code that the creator of the universe himself embedded into the fabric of the universe. We're not talking about karma, that if you do good, you're gonna get good. No. We're talking about a hack in the matrix.
Whoa.
Show me.
I've been on a quest for the last 8 years. In fact, this month is pretty much the anniversary of when everything started. 9 years ago, but specifically for this quest that I'm talking about, it's exactly 8 years. 8 years ago, I went to a conference, and this conference was called God's Economic Plan for Your Future. And at this point in my life, I didn't really have a plan. I just came to a new paradigm in my mind where I no longer was trying to force the outcome and control what needed to happen, but I wanted to discover what was predestined for me to impart and to experience in my life. And at this conference, one thing that was talked about was tithing. And when I was researching back in 2012 with various prosperity books and different, wealth manuals, I noticed that some of these books, even though they weren't Christian or Jewish in nature, they talked about the power of tithing. And if you give 10% of the revenue from your business or from your personal life, you will find that your resources will increase. So I found that a very peculiar notion, because at this point I was looking at the different laws within the universe as to how this all functions, or how it seems to function anyway. And I never put it into practice, but at this conference, I understood what tithing was truly about and how it really wasn't about money. It wasn't about money. It was about where our trust is put. And so I decided to take a leap of faith. And every single paycheck that I got from background acting, I would immediately give the top 10% to the church that I was going to at the time, called Covenant of Life Ministries, who has profound teachings on this subject. And the results were almost immediate. That next year, I made 45% more revenue than I've ever made from background acting. Not just that, but I also found myself getting one actor role per year without auditioning, and new opportunities were coming into my life. I found myself with the opportunity of scoring the background music for a straight-to-DVD movie. Never did that for a student film. And there's a paid gig, not a lot, but the point is there was opportunities constantly flowing into my life, and I always had more than enough. Whatever it was I was hoping to experience, whether it was a vacation or, of course, your standard rent and food and gas and insurance and everything like that, all needs were always met no matter what. And then I took it to the next level. In 2016, I was convinced that the economy was about to implode. And this was looking at the history of money, fiat currencies in particular, and how every single fiat currency has gone to zero from hyperinflation. And so it, in my mind, was inevitable that the US dollar is also going to experience this, which will, of course, change the entire global financial system, since it is the global currency reserve. So I bought as much physical silver as I possibly could. I bought 555 ounces, and I figured at some point that'll probably be over $100 per ounce, and possibly even over $1,000 per ounce, depending on what's going on with the currency at the time. And yeah, I felt inspired and excited about it. I was going to buy land, buy a house, and then, set up a foundation to expand on. And then my church, CLM, they were taking an offering. And I didn't have any cash, but I felt inspired to give to this cause, because what they were looking to do was to start a TV show that really explains the character of the Father. And I feel like, especially in the Christian community, there isn't a very strong revelation yet of the perfection and the unconditional love that the Father is. So I really wanted to support this cause, but I didn't have any cash. But what I did have was 555 ounces of silver. So I mulled it over, and I just sat with it for a while, and I thought, oh man, it's going to buy me a house in the future though. Wait a second, am I trusting this silver to buy me a house? Or am I trusting in God's orchestration and my predestined path that is filled with everything that I possibly need as I simply seek my life with Him? And that's when it became clear that what I was meant to do with that silver was give it to CLM. So I did. I gave all 555 ounces. And it felt liberating. I felt free in my heart. I felt as though I had a surge of inspiration and hope for the future, even though I didn't really have any kind of a method or a plan or an idea as to how this abundance would come into my life. I don't know, I felt, had a faith, a conviction. And within 6 months, I was led into a revelation of blockchain technology, more specifically Ethereum. And once I understood the implications of what blockchain technology is going to have on the globe in the years ahead, it was very clear to me that this is actually a much more powerful investing opportunity for compounding wealth than silver and gold ever could be. So I dove right in. I got a line of credit. I took about $15,000 and I put that into what I thought was going to be the next Ethereum, that was EOS. And then that turned out pretty interesting. Within 2 months, I found myself with 400% gains, and my portfolio was up to about $60,000 at the time, and it looked like things were looking very hopeful. Then some red tape started to form around the company, and it looked as though there were some legal issues and some possible corruption. And then my friend Araz, he enlightened me about Chainlink, and how Chainlink is going to be a very powerful oracle service for the blockchain world and the Internet of Value, the Internet of Things, basically anything that needs a data feed for real-time data. And it seemed right. So I went all in on Chainlink. My portfolio increased upwards to about $70,000 as Chainlink also went into an uptrend. At this point, I was pretty convicted and quite convinced that I don't need to trust in money for my future, because the number of opportunities and the amount of finances that were coming into my life, it always covered everything. And I always had the opportunities to go to Cancun, go be a groomsman for my buddy in Mexico, go on a vacation with my family, invest. I had everything that I needed, and then some. So I had an advantage. I didn't have to be fearful when it came to losing money in the market, because I knew that money doesn't make my future. It's about our hearts. It's about where we put our trust. And one of the most powerful ways to prove where our trust is by giving. What does Jesus have to say about this subject? Well, he's got a lot to say about it, actually. In fact, he even describes exactly how it works, why it works, and what exactly to do. So he's on record in saying, listen guys, don't be anxious or afraid, okay? Because it is literally the Father's pleasure to give you the kingdom. You know, go and sell your possessions, give to the poor, and you will create for yourselves money belts that never run out. You will have treasures in heaven where no one can mess with it. So that's paraphrased, but let's look at the elements here. So first off, he's saying, listen guys, you don't need to be anxious, so don't worry, okay? You can have confidence, you can have faith. Why? Because the Father literally wants us to live in the kingdom. Now, what is the kingdom? The kingdom is an attitude. It is an experience. And the experience of that in this human life is having right thinking that results in words and actions that elicits an experience of peace and enjoyment. And really, that's all we really want. I mean, that's the reason we do anything in life. We just want to enjoy our lives and we want to be at peace while we do it. So that's a major statement right there. And he gives a very important key as to how this is done in a very practical way. He says to sell your possessions and to give it to the poor, to the needy. And then what? Well, that then creates a transaction. And in this transaction, inextinguishable amounts of money are then gifted to that individual who gave. And not just that, but it can't even be corrupted or disrupted and stolen. It's a very sure fact. It's kind of like we can think of it as a distributed ledger technology. So let's say that there is a ledger that is connecting Earth and the spiritual realm above the earth. And everything that we do and everything that we say is validated and recorded on this ledger. And there are smart contracts. And these contracts basically have a cause and effect relationship. So when we give, and we give to the poor without trying to, look really good or increase our reputation and try to flaunt our generosity as something that we're taking credit for, it automatically engages a law within the spiritual realm that causes increase. So whatever it is that we give, that is what comes back to us in amplified form. So in this particular case, giving money results in more money coming into our experience. And not just that, but inexhaustible. It keeps on coming. So it's almost as if the moment that we give something, a smart contract is enacted that then automatically communicates with the substance of the universe to then project the experience of increase into our lives. Another example, the rich man that Jesus encounters. And this rich man, he's a good person, and he feels like he really lives up to what the law demands of him. But Jesus can see that there's something in his heart that isn't quite right. So he says, if you want to be perfect, go and sell what you have, give it to the poor, and you will have riches in heaven, and then follow me. Come do life with me. But the rich guy, he couldn't do it. He had a lot of land, a lot of possessions, and he trusted in the idea that his future is dependent upon his wealth. So his trust was in his wealth. It was not in the leadership of Jesus. So that is why Jesus said it is so hard for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. Why? Because the trust is an integral piece of the equation. Our trust has to be in something that is not tangible. That way it cannot be shaken. So when our trust is literally in Jesus and in the authorship of the Father for our lives, now we're unshakable. Another example. Jesus came to visit Zacchaeus, the accountant. And upon their visit, Zacchaeus felt inspired to give half of all of his possessions to the poor, and anyone that he's wronged, they're going to get 4 times more. And then Jesus was pretty excited about this. He said, salvation has come to this house. Now, notice in these examples, Jesus doesn't say to give to the synagogue. I know. He says to give to the poor. But at the same time, there is a record of Jesus commending tithing to the synagogue. He was talking to the Pharisees one time, and he said, listen, guys, you give 1/10 of your dill and 1/10 of your mint, but then you fail to actually do the more important laws that are of mercy and compassion. You should really do these laws without neglecting the others. So he did commend the act of giving 1/10 of the dill and the mint to the synagogue as an honorable thing. But even in doing so, not once does he ever say you must give to the synagogue. I know, this isn't really taught in church. I've never actually heard a pastor teach this, but it's what Jesus teaches, and that's what matters to me. And I could even take it further. We are, as followers of Christ, the church. We are his temple. And anything that we give and do to the least of his people, we do and give directly to him. So the tithe is supposed to go to Jesus. And so wouldn't that satisfy that condition as well? I'm not saying that it's not good to give to a church. If you belong to a church, I think it's great to support your church. That's a good community, and they do a lot of good. They really help inspire people. They help feed people in information as to what beliefs are harmonious with the Spirit of Christ, and that brings a much higher quality of life. But what I am saying here is that if you resonate with giving to a different cause, whether it's homelessness or water filtration around the world, hunger, whatever it might be, if it is helping people and it is giving to the needy, that's what's important. So Jesus goes even further here, and he says that when you do give, and you give to the needy, make sure that you give secretly, and then your Father who sees everything that you do will reward you openly. And so this is the important part, to not try and gain an image or some street credit, being like, oh, look how generous I am, and then try to get favor with people, because that's a deceitful action. But when you do it in secret, now you're no longer trying to gain the upper hand or manipulate the outcome, you're just looking to give out of generosity. So Jesus also says this about giving. He says, give generously, and generous gifts will be given back to you. It'll be shaken down to make room for even more. Abundant gifts will pour out upon you with such an overflowing measure that it will run over the top. The measurement that your generosity is becomes the measurement of your return. So going back now to the Old Testament and the Torah, in Malachi, it said that you bring all the tithes, the 10th, into the storehouse, so that there may be food in my house. And test me now in this, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you so great a blessing until there is no room to receive it. So this is going along the exact same lines. To the measure that we give is the measure that we receive back. It is a smart contract of amplification and increase. Generosity is one of the most powerful strategies and ways of living that we can experience the kingdom. And notice here, it's the 10th, so the first 10th. This is the minimum. Last year, I experienced an increase in my portfolio. I did 3 trades, and $27,000 US turned into $330,000 US. Now, I did not tithe on that. And the reason for this is I was under the assumption that I only need to tithe on whatever I convert back into Canadian dollars. So I roughly took out about $60,000 last year, and I paid roughly $6,000 as a tithe. Fast forward, and a long story short, in November of 2022, I found myself with a portfolio trading roughly $60,000. I found myself seeing my portfolio disintegrate despite my best efforts, and also experiencing a lot of grace along the way in the year of 2022. Now, moving forward, I am going to dedicate 20% of every single yield within the week from my trades. Now, you don't have to do 20%, you can do 10, and 10 you will find you will experience increase. But don't forget, to the measure that we give is the measure that we're going to receive. So if you can be bold, I definitely recommend it. So what resonates with you? Is it giving water? Is it giving food? Is it giving shelter? Is it giving to a church? How is it you would like to support the world around you and the people around you? Find a cause. And then decide what percentage you want to give from each profitable trade. And then when you do that, you will experience incredible miracles of increase. And not just that, but also you're going to experience a soulish effect. You're going to find yourself in a state of joy and in a state of peace because you are now operating in a very godly state. And that always results in an experience of the kingdom. And when we're in a state of peace and a state of joy, we are no longer nearly as susceptible to falling into fear and falling into greed. And this is a very, very important fact when it comes to acting on every single signal that is generated within our protocols. And that'll be lesson number 2, the importance of taking action and executing on every single signal that is generated.